When I was younger, I used to love rugby league. I probably still do love rugby league a lot. And we used to go to the games, and Dad used to work with a guy that played for the Cronulla Sharks when we were little, and he took us to a game, and after the game we got to go down into the change rooms, and we met all the players in the change rooms. And after that day, we thought we then had permission to just do that whenever we wanted. And so over the years we would go to games, and there was a little gate at North Sydney Oval which said players and officials only, and my brother and I would just casually open that gate, and we'd walk downstairs and we'd knock on the door to the change room, and we'd go in and we'd be chatting with all these rugby league players and congratulating them on what a great game they'd had and all that sort of thing. And it was just normal behaviour for us. We didn't see it as breaking the rules because we thought it was okay. Anyway, one afternoon in 1993, we were at the Belmore Sports Ground. Canberra had been thoroughly defeated by Canterbury, which was disappointing in itself. And there's a security guard standing at the back of the change rooms, and he obviously was paid by the hour, and when his time was up, he went home. And so myself and my mates thought, oh, he's gone, let's go and say good day to the Canterbury boys. And so we walked down and went in the change room, and then I nearly wet myself when this guy comes straight up, you get out of here, you kids, what are you doing in here? And I had a big panic, and that was the last time I went down into the change room. So the rules do have power when you know what the rules are, and when you have that understanding of the consequences of not following the rules, it's a lot easier to follow them. But life's not all about the rules. And we've been looking at Colossians, and earlier on we had a look in chapter 1, and the main real theme of this book is about the supremacy of Christ and how that needs to impact our lives and change the way that we live. Now, this book was written by a man who loved the rules. He was Pharisee of the Year probably back in AD 30, won it again in AD 31, and then he had this amazing transformation where he was walking on the road and he had a supernatural encounter with Jesus, and Jesus changed the way this man approached the rules and the way he approached his whole life. And so he's here writing this book to the Colossians, and he's trying to convey to them, you don't need to listen to all these people trying to tell you what you can and can't do. And they're saying you can eat this but you can't eat that, and you can do this but you can't do that. And they were being dictated to by the culture of the time, and the culture of the time was telling them what they could and couldn't do. And Jesus had the same issues with the people when he was living. His biggest adversaries were the ones that were supposedly the most righteous and the most in touch with what God wanted for their lives. And so Jesus knew what it was like to encounter the rules and have to butt up against what the rules are. So we get to this part in Colossians here, chapter 2, verses 16 to 23 is what we're looking at today. And it says, this is the Message translation. I just found this was a pretty apt way of putting it. It says, so don't put up with anyone pressuring you into details of diet, worship services, or holy days. All those things are mere shadows cast before what was to come. Don't tolerate people who try to run your life, ordering you to bow and scrape, insisting that you join their obsession with angels and that you seek out visions. They're a lot of hot air, that's all they are. They're completely out of touch with the source of life, Christ, who puts us together in one piece, whose very breath and blood flow through us. He is the head and we are the body. We can grow up healthy in God only as he nourishes us. And so the big, the big cultural influence at the time was the Gnostic belief that matter was evil, and the body, the more harshly you treated your body and the more rigorous your disciplines and regimes were, the better you were and the more acceptable you were to God. And so that's where a lot of the rules came from. And Erin and I were reading through Romans last week, and Paul again is reiterating his point about not conforming to man-made rules, I guess they are. So in Romans 14, 13 to 14, it says, "Forget about deciding what's right for each other. Here's what you need to be concerned about, that you don't get in the way of someone else, making life more difficult than it already is. I'm convinced, Jesus convinced me, that everything in itself is holy. We, of course, by the way we treat it or talk about it, can contaminate it." So there, Paul again is kind of saying that things in and of themselves are just things, and we can choose to have an attitude towards them that changes how the actual things are. So if you eat a piece of bread on a Saturday and Saturday's your day of no bread, well, you're not going to be in any trouble, because it's not the bread that's the problem, it's our heart and our attitude towards the things that we do. So Jesus is the one that we really need to follow, and he's the one that paid the price so that we don't have to be bound by human traditions and human rules. Does that mean that rules are a waste of time? No, it doesn't. I love rules, and I love discipline, and I love sort of having control over myself, and I think self-control and all those things are really important. And I love this definition of freedom. It comes from Foster in Seeing the Bible Afresh. He says, "The ability to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done is the true freedom in life. Freedom comes not from the absence of restraint, but from the presence of discipline." So I certainly feel like discipline is important, but if it's just a discipline of following 8 o'clock every morning, I read one chapter of the Bible, I pray for 13 minutes, I pray for these 7 people, and I've just got this structure, and if I've done that, I've ticked my box, I'm in a good relationship with God. It might help me have a good relationship with God, but it doesn't guarantee that my heart's in the right place. And for me, like, I love structure and discipline, and I love all of those things that help me be in a good place with God. But I know there's been times in my life where I've ticked all the boxes, but I've treated people with no respect, and I haven't loved people, and I've missed opportunities to be a blessing to other people because I thought, oh, I'm okay. I had my quiet time this morning. That's it. I do whatever I want now. So, and that's the danger of setting up rules and regulations, I guess, as well. One of the other dangers of setting rules and regulations is, and this is a personal thing for me, and it may or may not be the case for you, but I find that when I have certain expectations for myself, I can then transfer them onto other people. So I've got a great rule. One of my favourite rules is my coffee rule. I have one coffee every year, and I think that's a pretty good rule, and I love that rule. And I haven't actually had one since 2014, so I'm lagging a bit behind. So I'm breaking my own rule. But I think sometimes when I started this rule, it's not the case anymore. I think coffee's great, and I think you should drink as much of it as you feel necessary. But I think when I started this rule, I'd be looking around and going, oh, look at all those people dependent on caffeine. Can't get through the day without their cup of coffee. Oh, aren't they terrible? Aren't I so good? I only need one every 365 days. Yeah, Alan's getting his coffee break right now. But, so anyway, I think there's that temptation there that because God might have put it on our heart to take something seriously and convicted us of something, it doesn't mean we have to go around pointing the finger at everyone else and expecting them to live by the same rules that God has put on our heart for that period of time. Because it's different things for different people at different times that are important to God and important to us and where we're at and where we are on the journey. And it's not that one is better than the other. And we get up to verses 20 to 23 here, and Paul says, "So then, if with Christ you've put all that pretentious and infantile religion behind you, why do you let yourselves be bullied by it?" Now this is the context that Alan told me to be talking about today, this idea of not being bullied by the rules, I guess. So don't touch this, don't taste that, don't go near this. Don't you
don't you think things are here today and gone tomorrow are worth that kind of attention? Such things sound impressive if said in a deep enough voice. They even give the illusion of being pious and humble and ascetic. But they're just another way of showing off, making yourselves look more important. So, I've been thinking might be a good way for us to combat being bullied. Because I think for someone certainly with my temperament type, I think I'm the kind of temperament that can be prone to being bullied by people. I think strong-willed people do see nice, calm, relaxed people like me and think they can control and manipulate. So how do you stand against controllers and manipulators who want to change the way you behave? And I've had this mnemonic which I've used for a long time now, probably for about 5 years. I've tried to think about this, and I just want to share it with you today. And it's this idea of having vision. And so I've got the letters in the word vision to have a word that helps remind me of what my vision is and what's important to me in my life. So the people in Colossae were being dictated to by the vision of the culture and the vision of the people, but we don't need to be dictated to by our culture and by what other people think. We need to have the vision that God has given for us in our lives. So the first letter is the letter V, and the V is for victory. So Jesus has given us victory over our culture and the driving forces behind it. So we're no longer actually governed by our culture. We're governed by Jesus Christ and his rule in our lives. And so all of our decisions are based on the fact that we have actually already won victory through Jesus. And one of the things that helps us with this victory is the letter I, which is image. We've all been made in the image of God, and he has given us all we need to live for him. So without us being image bearers of God, it would be really hard for us to have victory, because we wouldn't have the power to have the victory. Jesus has won the victory for us, and he's actually helping us by coming and dwelling in us and making us like him and encouraging us to behave like him and giving us the capacity to do the things that he's wanting us to do. But that takes surrender, so which is my next one, is the S, surrender. And the surrender is not to the culture and not to popular opinion. It's not surrender to what the flavour of the month is. It's surrender to Jesus. It's surrender to him and his will for our lives. It's not surrender to what we want for ourselves or what we think is best for us. It's saying to God, you are the boss. You are the one that's won the victory. You've made me in your image. I surrender to you. I give myself to you today. And you've equipped me to do everything that I need to do. The next I is imminence. So the idea of God's imminence comes very early on in the book of Genesis, when when man was created. God's brooding presence was there in amongst Adam and Eve, and he was there essentially cheering them on. And what I like about the idea of imminence is it says that God is the one that has the final result in hand. So imminence says even when it looks like you're losing, God is going to find a way to win. And God's best, the outcome, even though the outcomes and results along the way in the process don't look like victories, imminence says that God wins in the end. The next one is O for obedience. So obedience can sound a bit like following the rules, which is kind of counter to what I've been trying to say before, but it's about obedience to the truth and standing for what is really true and what really matters in your life. It's obedience to what God has placed on your heart, not the human traditions and the human idea of what we should or shouldn't be doing. So that's the obedience part there. And then the last one, I've changed this over the years. It used to be never give up, but I've changed it now to no comparisons, because what I've found is that one of the biggest hindrances to me in my own journey with God is comparing myself to other people. And it's either by thinking I'm better than other people. So you turn on the news, if you want to feel good about yourself, you turn on the news every night and you think, oh, I'm not as bad as that guy. Oh, I didn't. And you could spend the first 20 minutes of the news thinking how great you were. Or the other comparisons is thinking you're not as good as other people. And you're looking over there and saying, oh, gee, that guy, he has a 4-hour quiet time. When am I ever going to fit a 4-hour quiet time in? Or that person, they go down to the homeless shelter and do this over there. And so the idea of being comfortable with who you are, and that goes back to understanding that you're made in the image of God, and that God has made you a particular way for a particular purpose. And I don't have to be like Mike Root. I don't have to be like Andrew Morden. I don't have to be like Alan Vincent. I can be me. And how God's made me is okay. In fact, it's better than okay. It's great, because what he's given me to do is different to what he's given other people to do. It's all got the same overarching theme and the same overarching direction. We're all heading the same way, but the way, the outworking of it is very different for each of us individually. And so that's where I've decided no comparisons is probably as good as, if not better than, without wanting to compare to my previous letter, Never Give Up. So I guess for us this week, I think for me, I just asked myself, am I living with a vision this week? Am I living with victory? Am I trusting that Jesus is victorious in my life? Because he actually is. That's actually a finished victory. It's an ongoing victory and a finished victory at the same time. Do I believe I've been made in the image of God? Do I believe that I can live my life with God working through me? Am I willing to surrender? Am I willing to get up in the morning and say, Jesus, today is your day. I'd like to do all of this stuff, but I surrender that stuff to you, and I want to do what's most important for you today. Am I listening for God cheering me on? Am I going to be willing to cheer someone else on? Am I going to be part of that imminence in someone else's life when I see someone doing something really great and saying, I think you can do this. I think Jesus is going to help you with this. Are we going to be cheering on behalf of those in the family of believers? Are we going to obey the truth? Or are we just going to do whatever we want? And can we make sure we don't compare